Brad, are you hooked up?
Looks like it.
Oh, great, we can hear you too, that's great, okay. All right, the hour of 6:30 having arrived, I'd like to call the regular meeting of the City of Columbus Plan Commission for September 8th, 2022 to order. Kyle, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Motif is absent. Albright?
Here.
Tylen is absent. Baston?
Here.
Traxler is absent. Monday?
Present.
And Myers?
Here. All right, we have a quorum. Item 3, notice of open meeting. This meeting has been posted in accordance with state law. Item 4, approve the agenda. Agendas are printed in front of you. I'll entertain a motion to use this one or amend.
Motion to approve the agenda?
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Item 5, approve minutes from the August 11th, 2022 Plan Commission meeting. Those are also in your packet. Take a moment to look through them, and I will entertain a motion to approve or amend.
Albright can make a motion to approve the minutes from August 11th, 2022.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by aye.
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 Opposed? Minutes are approved. Item 6, citizen comments. This is the opportunity for anybody in the room or on Zoom to make a general comment. Please step up to the mic. Thank you. State your name and address if you would. Thanks.
My name is Deb Hefner, and I live at 426 West Mill Street. And I'm speaking with regard to the hazardous material variance discussion that happened last month, but I wasn't able to attend that meeting because I was ill. And I honestly didn't see the meeting, but I'm just going to say I live directly behind it. And I don't understand why anyone in the city would want a hazardous material facility, storage facility in the community, especially located where it is. Not only all of the neighbors, who are the only ones that I can see on the list that you notified that this would happen. I mean, yes, we're directly affected if something were to go wrong, but if there were a fire or if there was any kind of a spill, especially if there was a fire with toxic smoke, I mean, half of this community could be affected by that. It's like adjacent to the Crawfish River. If there were a leak, we're affecting more than just our community. The railroad track is right there. I mean, there's so many things that can go wrong. And even though they do this for a living, there are no guarantees. They don't know what their workers are always doing and how they're handling that material. And they're probably not on site watching all the time to check on it and see what's happening. I'm not sure how long materials are kept there. And I don't know if it's going to be solely for toxic materials, but I just do not see this as anything that the city of Columbus needs in their middle of their community, actually. I mean, it's on the edge, but it affects both sides, including the town of Columbus. So I am vehemently against it. I think it needs to be seriously considered, and not to offend, but I'm sure if any of you were living where we are, you would not be for it either. So, like I said, I was upset that you didn't let more neighbors know, and if I had thought it was going to be discussed tonight, I mean, I may try and talk to other neighbors, because it affects people across the street. It affects people down the block that aren't adjacent to the facility. If there's groundwater penetration, there's a lot of people who are going to be affected by this. And like I said, toxic smoke, I mean, you've seen it happen in Illinois and other places. Huge areas, miles around it, are cleared out because of it. And the types of materials they have are extremely toxic. So that's all I wanted to say. I think it needs to be seriously considered and hopefully not accepted. If they were just storing there, that would be awesome. I would love that. I mean, when Gar Plastics was there, I was worried about them all the time because I didn't know what they were dumping and what they were doing, and I worried about explosions and things with that group just from the processes they were doing. This is a known issue, a known problem. So that, I just wanted to voice my concerns as someone who lives right behind it.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
No problem. We won't go into more things. If you haven't had an opportunity to watch
I will watch.
that, a lot
Like
of
I
the
said, I
same
had
things-
COVID for a month and I had all I
Yeah,
could do for
I-
2.5 weeks, all I could do to like function and work and
I
do
had
stuff.
my own
And I kind of didn't think
experience,
about
yeah.
watching the video,
So,
but
it's there.
Yeah, I
Many
will.
of the things that you mentioned were discussed.
Good.
And I think there are some things that might be clarified for you by watching that. I mean, so anyway, so that was, you can see all of the comments that people made and then all of our
Okay,
discussion.
good.
So,
yeah, I will go back and watch. Like I said, you didn't even remember it was today because I hadn't gone last time and I kind of forgotten and somebody mentioned it like yesterday. And I just, didn't get time and thought I would show up and make my voice heard.
Okay.
Since I didn't get to do it last time.
Sure.
All right, thank you
All right.
very much for listening.
thank you.
Have a good night.
All right. Nobody else is in the room. Is anybody on Zoom that wants to make a general comment? I see Brad and Jim, the applicant for the next couple things, so I'm going to presume that's the end of item 6. We can move on to item 7, requested parking reduction for lot 6 of the Commerce Center and similar for lot 7 of the Commerce Center. Is there any reason we can't sort of address these
I think it
both
makes
at the
sense.
same time?
To discuss them both at the same time.
Yeah, we'll have to vote separately.
Yeah.
Yes, okay, good. Will you introduce it, Kyle?
Yes, so this is a relatively straightforward ask. Essentially, the code requires for multifamily developments to have 2 garage spaces in addition to 1 additional space. So in the proposed development, having 40 units, the code would require 80 garage spots and 40 parking spaces, or 120 spaces overall. On lot 6, the applicant is showing 40 garaged parking spots, so 1 garage parking spot per apartment, in addition to 83 additional parking spots. So in the total, they've actually got 3 more spots than would be required. And on lot 7, they have, again, 40 garaged parking spots and 84 parking spaces for 124 overall spaces. This does match other developments, and I think it's a reasonable request to make this shift. And when you actually look at it, it was funny, the conversation we were having just in general, leading up to the meeting about storage and how we collect things as people. One of the observations that the applicant has is when you put 2 of those parking spots in a garage, it becomes storage and they're not parking there anyways. So having the single car garage and more outdoor spaces might actually increase the amount of parking that is usable. But again, we're achieving the total number overall, just in a different ratio of garaged to additional. And the applicant is on in case there are questions for them. So the recommendation from staff is to approve this.
Just a clarification, Kyle, this is a decision on granting the variance, not a decision on a site plan. The site plan is handled at staff level, right?
Correct.
Because this is a already approved conditional use.
Correct. This is strictly the parking that you're addressing. One of the requirements is that they have a complete site plan, and that's, again, reviewed at the staff level, but your decision is based solely around the parking, but you can obviously use the information in the site plan to determine if that makes sense or not.
Great, thanks. Jim, do you have anything to add before we get into the deliberation on the commission?
No, I think Kyle did a fantastic job of explaining our request. Obviously, this is a project that has come before this commission and also the board, the council, I should say, quite often. And we're finally hoping to get to the final steps here of, the final city sign-off via the site plan review.
Thanks. I'll open it up to the commission for any comments or questions or discussion.
I don't have anything. I think it's pretty straightforward.
I as well, but I mean, the ordinance defines how many garages, and how many parking spots that they need to do. Is there a reason why there was 2 to 1?
I'm not certain what the rationale was, but looking at another development, similar multifamily development on River Road, it's much more in the 1 garage per apartment ratio. So I'm not sure what the rationale was, but it makes that requirement of 2 garage stalls with 1 additional, but it also builds in the variance to be granted by the Plan Commission.
Which is a simplified variance process compared to other zoning
Correct.
variance
It
processes.
uses the variance
Right.
term, but it is
Right.
by no
Right.
means a variance of the same standard requiring special circumstances.
Right.
It's essentially asking the commission to evaluate if there's adequate parking, because we don't want to create overflow parking that then creates additional problems by this development, and I don't see that happening.
Right. I think we had discussed that maybe at the conditional use stage, like the concern about perhaps cars spilling out into the roadways and parking there and things like that. Are these 2-bedroom units, 3-bedroom units, a variety?
Those plans have changed over time, and Jim might be able to refresh the memory if they're all 2 bedrooms or if they're a combination. The way our code reads, you could have a 12-bedroom apartment, and it's,
Right.
2 garage stalls with 1 additional.
Right.
Obviously, that would be a situation where the commission may say, yeah, that's, we're not going to grant a variance, we want all of it.
Right,
So,
right. So,
Jim, did you have the breakdown?
Yeah, it is a combination of 2s and 1s.
oh, 2s and 1s.
Primarily 2.
Okay. So all right. Okay, good.
Trying to get the car ratio?
Well, yeah, I mean, sort of just in my own mind, like 1 spot per bedroom plus 1 seems reasonable. And if you're meeting 3 spots of some variety for every single one of these, I think that's more than adequate. So,
Yeah, that's a good point. So, I mean, and talking about storage, that's unfortunate. I can imagine if you did have 2 closed garages and then they put stuff in there and then they're parking in the overflow.
Yeah.
That would be, I would be mad.
Yeah, per our revised latest and greatest plans, it is 2 1-bedroom units and 8 2-bedroom units.
oh, per building, yeah, okay.
Per 10-unit building.
Okay, so the vast majority, 2 bedrooms, but that still kind of meets my rule of thumb of a 2-bedroom gets 3 spots, a 1-bedroom gets 2 spots.
And you are responsible for the plowing of the driveways or the parking lots?
Yes, we would be correct.
Okay. That'd be the only thing, more cars out in the parking lot. It's gonna be tough for the snow removal, but that's your responsibility. So what do we do?
Grocery stores seem to manage it, so, yes. All right, any other questions or comments? Brad?
No questions for me.
All right. I'll entertain a motion so is this a recommendation to council to grant the variance? So we are granting, okay. So I'll entertain a motion to grant or deny the variance for lot 6. We'll do lot 7 separately.
I'll make a motion to request the parking lot reduction variance for lot 6 of the Commerce Center.
I can second that.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by aye.
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 Opposed? All right, variance granted for lot 6. I'll entertain a motion for lot 7.
I'll make a motion for the requested parking lot reduction variance for Lot 7 on Commerce.
I can second that.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those signify favor by aye.
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 Opposed? Great. Variance granted for Lot 7 also. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, moving on to item 7C. I see there's a draft ordinance for a conditional use permit renewal process.
Yes.
Is that fair?
Yes.
Fair to say?
So recently, as we've been going through some of these conditional uses, we've been saying, hey, you're going to come back in a year and check in. Unfortunately, the code doesn't really have a process for that. So that would really require a brand new application, brand new fees, brand new hearing. And I think that didn't necessarily meet the intent of what we were trying to accomplish. So what we have here, and this is a draft and could be tweaked. Essentially, as they drafted this up, it would be, if there's no changes to the permit requested, they would apply to the Plan Commission about 45 days in advance. It would be up to the Plan Commission to determine if you wanted to hold another public hearing or if you just wanted to have it as a regular agenda discussion. The clerk would still have to notify the adjoining or abutting property owners of the request, but then basically the Plan Commission could then determine renew it for another year, renew it for another X number of years, or just let it be permanent. Or you could recommend that they go back through a full process, essentially ending the current one and making them go back through if there was problems or concerns or something like that. So that's kind of the starting point. Again, because it's a change to the zoning code, it has to start here, and then it would make its way to the city council for consideration. So we thought this was a way to kind of facilitate what we've been trying to do with the revisiting of conditional uses, just to see if they're matching our expectations.
Okay, so for tonight, this is a discussion item only, right? We'll
Yeah,
give you our
essentially,
comments and,
in the event you wanted to see changes, we can obviously still easily change it, but this would be a good time to identify if, there's any changes you would like. The one thing that was talked about at City Council, I know there was some conversation about whether or not it was any changes, or if it could be a minor change versus a major change, but we got kind of stuck on who's going to define minor versus major. So there's still potentially room for the commission to evaluate this, and maybe this is just the first review, and then maybe come back with suggestions if you want for next meeting.
okay. A couple things come to mind to me first. Is 45 days enough? Or did you guys do the math on that?
Well, I think they just set up a time, so it'd be 45 days before the expiration of their permit, and the permit gets issued after the city council approves
Right.
it.
Right.
And this is only going to Plan Commission, not city council.
Oh, really?
That's how
Okay.
it's drafted right now, is that
Okay.
if there's no changes, it stays only
Right.
Plan Commission.
Right, okay. Okay, so if the date of expiration is the day before a certain Plan Commission meeting, Plan Commission would meet roughly 30 days prior to that to grant the extension, but at the meeting prior to that, the Plan Commission would have to decide whether a public hearing was needed or not. So maybe 60 is better.
It could be.
That'll make sure that you catch two meetings,
Well, I think the 45 days would catch two meetings.
would it?
Because essentially you have a meeting at least every 31 or 32 days.
Right.
So I think, and you don't have to wait 15 or 45 days or anything like that before you would consider it. But we can change it to 60 days just as easily, so.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just thinking of the case, because of course it'll happen, right?
Right, if we don't have a meeting.
Murphy's Law says we have a meeting on the 15th and it expires on the 14th.
And we don't have quorum or something. So Kyle, can you what is the clerk process going to be? They're going to send a letter out stating that you're coming up on review.
I'm anticipating something along the lines of, this permit holder has applied for renewal
Yep.
of the conditional use permit, and the plan commission will, discuss this issue, or, some language like that.
Right, and if there's no changes, it essentially would be basically a line item on our agenda, and it's almost essentially like consent.
Yeah.
Like, it would be as easy as saying, I do want to say this because I understand where Paul Johnson was coming from, but if somebody wants to change their hours, it would require the whole process. And to me, I really wish we could define major and minor, because to have to go through, I don't know how many conditional use permits we have out there. Do you have any idea?
Not off the top of my head.
So, if somebody has their conditional use, like Hunter, I don't know, I don't remember if it was like in the evening or whatever, and he decides, well, you know what, this is going well, I want to do this, starting at 2 o'clock, then he's got to start over, and that includes that expense. And I feel like there should be some kind of availability to make small changes, but that's just me. Maybe I'm, that's. Other people don't agree, then that's what it is.
I think your question was more about the concerns that I've had with all of these timed permits, when they're going to expire and all that. What is the process to trigger the notification of that renewal coming up? Are you going to, I think you asked, is the clerk going to send that out to the permit holder to say, hey, your permit's coming to an end date in 45 days. What do you wish to do with it?
No, I would anticipate we're probably not going to be monitoring like that. We would probably identify it with the initial permit to say, here's your deadlines to apply for renewal. But the clerk would then be doing the notifications of the abutting owners based on the application being received. But I don't know that we're necessarily going to keep a running file of all the conditional uses that we need to remind them to renew. I think we would probably try to make it clear to them, but expect them to manage the renewal to make sure that they're meeting the deadlines.
Okay. I got a feeling we'll have a whole bunch
Yep.
that are going to auto-renew.
So then, okay, so if you're not gonna do the due diligence to remind them, how are we gonna know if somebody's 90 days past due? Somebody's got to track something, right?
Probably the zoning administrator.
So Brandon, are you gonna create an Excel spreadsheet that you can list everybody that has a permit and follow up with them? Because you're right, if somebody forgets, it could be 90 days later, or more.
It's something I've done in the past for our conditional use permits. We've had a list that says, they were issued in
Right.
this year, and then the next year you kind of look at those and track them. I guess it'd be similar to like our sign permits right now, or our fence permits. We have a tracker in there. It states the date it was issued, who it was issued to, all that stuff. So yeah, if that's something, and I think it should be tracked. So if that
Right.
falls on zoning, yeah.
I can't, to me, to require the resident to remember to do that, I just don't feel that it's gonna happen.
Yeah, I can imagine that not going well.
Not going well.
Yeah.
I just, and we have to keep doing them when we're 60, 90 days out. We're not, that's not productive either.
The flip side of that, the good news is that if you're not thinking about that permit, things are likely going well. Whereas the ones where you may have questions like, okay, is this going to work? You're probably going to hear about from
Right.
residents that, hey, this is an issue, and it's going to be on your mind. If ones that are kind of slipping and it's just going well, it's not necessarily a problem, but
Then does it auto-renew for the life of the ownership of the property?
it shouldn't.
No, it would expire, and they would be then in violation operating. I think there is that balance between how much staff should be holding their hands and how much we expect them as running a business in a residential neighborhood or whatever the conditional use is, how much obligation is on the applicant to make sure that they're operating within our rules. If you don't expect them to reapply within the time frame, I wouldn't expect them to adhere to most of the rules that you set for them anyways. If that's a condition, that's a condition, and they should treat it just as seriously as a parking restriction or an hour restriction, and they should abide by it. And from my perspective, if I had a conditional use permit, I would do what I needed to do to make sure that you were operating within the requirements.
I understand that part of it, but most of them are for what, the life of the property?
Yeah, if there's no time frame established, essentially it runs with the property unless the use ceases for like a year or 366 days.
Okay, because I think what we wanted to accomplish by this was to, let's do a check-in after this year. When they renew, are we gonna just renew it for another year to check in, or?
That would be up to the commission.
Okay.
There will be a fee associated with this, so there's going to be revenue coming from it, but I would not want to see, personally, I wouldn't want to see a steady stream of 5, 10, 15 conditional uses coming back every month just to pay a fee. I think if you have true concerns that you think you need that year, I think that's good. But just to say one more year, we've had no problems for the past 5, I don't know what we're hoping to accomplish at that point.
Right.
I think then you could go to longer terms or just take the term off.
So this renewal process would cover that? It would be the duration of whatever we defined?
Yes.
Okay.
The Plan Commission could renew that for a period of time as determined by the Plan Commission. And that period of time could be indefinite.
Okay. So your recommendation is just go to 60 days?
Well, I had that, right. I think that gives the appropriate amount of lead time. I'm hearing what you're saying about the, notifying the applicant. Honestly, I think that needs to be incumbent on the applicant, their responsibility to know when their permit is up. I deal with this a lot at work, right? We'll give out directives to dam owners and, you're supposed to do this by this date, this by this date, this by this date, right? We would spend a lot of time chasing all of those dates down if we were the ones reminding somebody to do what we had asked them to do prior, right? When we have other arguably more pressing responsibilities. So I think, the responsibility should be on the owner. If the city comes up with some good mechanism that auto-generates a letter 90 days before the hearing, okay, great, more power to the city. But I think sort of as a baseline expectation, that's something. Now, could we also do something like standard conditions and say, please refer to section 11483, whatever, in the code for your renewal deadlines, right? We could do something like that when we approve, right, to point it out. But anyway, it's kind of like you were saying, like sidewalk shoveling ordinance, right? People are supposed to keep their sidewalks clear. Do we have the sidewalk cop driving around after it snows and making sure people do that? No. If somebody brings it to the attention of the city, yes, that moves it up the ladder. So it's that prioritization issue.
Alternatively, you could also give date certain, kind of anticipate it's going to the committee of the whole and, figure about a month and say, by August 1st of 2023, you need to renew. And then it's clear, it's right there, they know it from the start.
I have no problem putting that onus on the person. I just, I work for a state agency and we do chase people.
Yeah, so do I, right? And I was giving you an example of where we don't chase people necessarily.
So
right?
I just can envision if they don't have some kind of quick reminder, they're gonna be like, oh, I didn't know, or I forgot.
Yeah. Is what you were getting at, Kyle, like, if we don't hear from a certain date, we assume that, or we will treat this as a no change renewal application and and take it up as a no change. In other words, we will address it on that date, but we will not consider any difference to what your original application was.
No, if they want a difference on their application, the way it's written now, they have to go through the whole process. They want to change 1 hour earlier, go through the whole process. That might be something we want to change. But if they don't apply, it's not going to trigger the notification, and it's not going to trigger, and they won't be paying the fee that'll be required. And so it would, we would assume that they've stopped operation. If it goes to its expiration, you could also put in some sort of late process where, if within 60 days, they apply after, the permit expired, that there's some process for them to get back to the original conditions without a full process, but I don't know exactly how that would work.
Is there a penalty if they don't renew?
Well, that's what I would envision, because otherwise, why renew in time? Just wait till you're,
Right.
Eventually you might actually, save up enough months to, catch a year of break or something,
Well, but
Take the risk.
to track that though would generate an accounts receivable. So, I mean, just like a yearly accounts receivable. I mean, so that would be one reason to track it, and actually, if you tracked it in accounts receivable and this person owes whatever the charge is going to be, I don't even know, whatever, $50 or $75 for the sake of argument, then we just send them a bill to say, you need to renew. And if there's no changes, then it's whatever, it's no changes.
So it's, Brad, do you have anything to throw in the pool?
No, I'm good, Brad.
Okay. All right. So that sounds like a point we'll probably want to think about how or what to change there. If I can switch topics for a minute, sort of talking about that. It wasn't clear in here that any change they proposed would have to go through the full process. Does it?
Yeah, it says with no changes. To renew the permit with no changes.
Right. So it explains that. I don't know if it's worthwhile putting in a phrase saying, any changes to the existing permit refer to section.
I think that is a good discussion point, though, because, there is kind of a clear line that it's literally no changes.
Right.
Not a half hour early, a half hour late.
Right.
If it was, I'm thinking of Hunter, it was like him and his wife were going to work in the operation there.
Right.
Well, maybe his wife doesn't want to work in it anymore, so he's down to one. Or he wants to have his son help, which is still a family member in the household. Well, is that a change? And does that mean it's a new, I just hate to trigger this full process for something that is truly minor. I think we're going to struggle defining minor, but I'd maybe like to try.
It feels like something, to me, it feels like something that we have to sort of draw that hard line there. And then if after some time we have this on the books, that we start to notice, some things where we could start to make that definition, we can change it then. So I feel like this is a really good process, and I'm willing to have it not be perfect for the sake of
Right.
trying some things out, right? And improving what we have.
But you said something about maybe potentially the goal is to have them just come through one cycle and then be done.
I think if you have them come back after a year, I think there's a concern that, we're not really sure exactly how this is going to work in the real world. To thinking of the Airbnb, maybe parking's going to be a nightmare that we didn't think it was going to be, or the promises that they made maybe aren't really being held to. So I think it's that first initial kind of, is this working like intended, and a chance to take a look at it. if you're doing this 3-4 years in a row, I feel like if there's problems, they should be addressed, and they should probably be coming back for more of a full evaluation. But that's up to the commission. You could just continually renew it for 1 year.
Major, or, and even if there's some changes that are minor, we could probably say, no, just do it as not that big of a change, or, so it's really on our shoulders you don't want it to be on our shoulders?
So the intent of this is that the application does not change, but our conditions could. Right?
Yes, I believe you could change the
Right.
conditions at review.
Okay.
Or actually, I think if you were intending to renew without modification, I think that would trigger the full process. If you determine that the conditional use permit should not be renewed without modification, you shall require the permit holder to apply for a new conditional use permit. And so again, if you're having them come back, I sort of view that as you're evaluating the effectiveness of the conditions that you established. And so it would even tie your hands the way it's currently written. If you wanted to tweak the parking, tighten it up, or loosen it, you're kicking it back to a full process again. And I'm not sure that's really what the intent of having them come back is to have it exactly the same. I think you'd almost anticipate having this process that you're thinking maybe there might be little tweaks. And so you would maybe want to accommodate that.
So you brought up a good point. So the conditional use that we just did tonight, the parking, we just approved it. We didn't have that stipulation that it would need to come back.
Different process tonight.
Yeah, so,
Yeah, this is not the conditional, tonight wasn't a conditional use. I'm thinking of Hunter Frank, the hazardous material storage, and the Airbnb are kind of the most recent ones. And you don't even need to put these time conditions on every conditional use. There doesn't have to be a reason that, it just seems lately like that's been something we've kind of built in, but it would not be required on any.
well, I think the reason why is because instead of somebody saying a hard no, giving people an opportunity to make a go of it, which I appreciate anyway.
Yeah, so the intent here is to have a streamlined process where the applicant hasn't changed their application. We aren't going to change the conditions we put on it. This is the calling the question of whether sort of the experiment on both of our parts really truly is working, right? If the applicant wants to change something, full process. If we don't think that the application that they had put in and the conditions we had put on it originally are working, full process.
Correct. As written.
I'm building a flow chart right now.
So again, if you wanted to build in some flexibility, especially I think on your own behalf, having your own hands tied by this could be a little frustrating if you just wanted to make a minor tweak on the, like I said, even loosening or tightening restrictions. It kicks it into this full process, which is expensive and time consuming. But this is the time where we can kind of tweak that. So it might be worth starting more restrictive, or it might be worth kind of building in some flexibility on one side or both.
I wonder if the ordinance, so just as putting this out here, if they go a year, they can renew, no problems. I wonder if we want to put that in the ordinance, that it doesn't need to be extended to the next year, instead of making that a decision. I don't know. Is that something that could or should be maybe in the ordinance? So that if it goes through the cycle one time and everything's fine, they're not
There are no
even,
changes.
yeah, and there's no changes, they're not expected to come back.
I don't know if I would do that, because on a case-by-case basis, there may be some you do still want to monitor. Even if it went, well, when you might say, Yeah, but there may be others that you could be like, oh, yeah.
But I mean, that's just like any other decision that we're gonna have to make, right? We could make that decision at that time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because they're gonna have to come here anyway, so you can either say, yes, 1 year, or, 3 years, 5 years, indefinite, it doesn't matter. But, yeah, I don't know that you necessarily want to set something that says, yeah, you make it through 1 year, you're good. That's probably not
Yeah,
a
for
good-
an example, to be B&B, right? I only rented it once in that year, so it might, there's not enough sample there to really understand, so you probably just extend it for another year to say, we need more data, but
Before the next meeting, I'll put this out on the WCMA listserv and just see what other communities are doing, just see if we can get some wording, because I like what you're thinking, if it's a minor change, if it's, an hour early, or, if it's going from Hunter Frank and his wife to just Mr. Hunter Frank working, what kind of changes that have to trigger the whole process? I'll see if I can find some other ordinances and wording and how they deal with changes like that before the next meeting.
Well, in the accounting world, we use the word material. Is it a material change, right? And if we're gonna go, if, he's doing well and he wants to push his hours back to 2, job changes or whatever, or whatever. It's whether or not the change is considered material.
all right.
Sounds good. I mean, the 60 days probably makes sense, I guess, in my opinion.
They'll get to that before they know it, man. If you have a year and then you have really 10 months to re-renew, it'll feel right around the corner. I get that.
Right.
So, maybe we need to be conscientious too of really using then that time frame tool more judiciously. Not that I think we haven't, but I think that having something in place like this might change a little bit how we think about putting that restriction on.
Right.
So,
Right, make sure that what the restriction is actually worth it,
right.
worthwhile.
So,
Yep.
to the applicant, to staff, to ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. All right. Brad, any other comments there?
No, nothing to add.
Okay. Well, no action on this tonight. I think, can I suggest that commission members, both present and absent, maybe send their, maybe some draft changes or other comments.
We can
And
table
in
it
the
for more
meantime-
information.
Sounds like our routine. Okay.
Good catch, by the way.
So, all right. Is there any, I want to be sensitive to, meeting outside of meeting time. Is there any particular way we need to get you comments? Like they need to be addressed directly to you,
Yeah.
not to the group?
Yeah, correct.
To myself, you could copy Brandon. If he's not copied, I'll copy him. We're going to be working on that transition
Yeah.
over time. Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, that was the last item on the agenda, apart for adjourning. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Alder Albright will make a motion to adjourn.
I want to hear a second.
Please.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. We're adjourned.